All right. Good evening, everybody. I would like to warm welcome to everybody who joined this evening's talk. I'm gonna talk to you about SpaceX. This is one of those topics that I think it just fascinates everybody. Let me just mute myself. So, this is something that I think and I hope that a lot of people will love the topic. Probably you always wanted to learn, hear something about SpaceX. You heard in the news that they were launching some rockets or something, but probably you never looked it up. You never did your research that what is it exactly that they are doing. So I would love to make a good presentation about SpaceX. But before I kickstart my talk, let me tell you a couple of things. First of all, if you have any questions tonight or later on, please, but let's just talk about tonight. There is a live chat section in the stream. If you would like to ask me any questions, please feel free to write it down in the chat dialog box, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions of yours. Right, but before I actually proceed, I would like to put through a message from Zuzanna, my contact who actually organized this event for us, and she's got a message for you guys. So let me just put this up for you. Stay with me.
Good evening. A warm welcome from Westminster Reference Library. My name is Zsuzsanna and I'm in charge of the telescope project at Westminster Libraries. I'm very happy that you chose to spend your time with us this evening. But before we start, let me tell you about Westminster Reference Library. We are the first public library in Europe to lend telescopes to the public. You will be able to take a telescope, one of those red beauties behind me, for 2 weeks. You need to become a library member to do that, and you can live anywhere in the UK. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Szabolcs Nagy, who will be the speaker tonight, and his talk will be about SpaceX. Thank you very much. Clear skies. Enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Zsuzsanna. It's very kind of you. I'm more than happy to fulfill this request. So, okay, without actually talking too much, let's just kickstart this event. Hi, Emre, and hi, Edith. Nice to see you guys. Again, if you have any questions for the future reference, just please shoot me a message. Okay, in the chat box. All right, SpaceX. Let's see what we can learn from SpaceX tonight. I will occasionally show my face because I think what I'm about to show you is probably more interesting than my face. Okay, so the structure of this talk is going to be sectioned up with different topics. So there will be, I'm going to talk about how SpaceX came about and how actually they started this path, this very long path of theirs, and how they actually achieved those milestones that actually change not just the rocket industry, but it's about to change the whole world. So, okay, let's see what we've got here. So, I would like to start with a quote from Elon Musk himself. From himself. So he said, "You want to wake up in the morning and think the future is going to be great, and that's what being a spacefaring civilization is all about. It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past. And I can't think of anything more exciting than going out there and being amongst the stars." Well, it's a very good message. Obviously, you need to know that Elon Musk is basically the engine behind SpaceX, but I do not want to narrow down my talk to one person, because I certainly do believe that the achievement what this amazing company already have in the bag is not down to Elon Musk. Elon Musk is probably the catalyst in the equation, but it's definitely the hardworking people who actually make the company as it is. And there is a saying that rockets are just as good as people are building them. Okay, so let's see the early years, how this whole thing, how this whole journey actually started. So the whole journey started in 2001 when Elon Musk had this idea that he would like to send an experiment to planet Mars, and he would like to basically just fulfill this dream. So what he's done is that he, on the 6th of May 2002, he founded his company called Space Exploration Technologies Corporation, or in short, SpaceX, probably as everybody knows these days. The headquarters of the company is in Hawthorne, California. And this is how they started, basically, with just a limited amount of workers. And he invited this, since it went really famous, mariachi band. So this photo is reminding everybody that where SpaceX actually has started. This is their headquarters in Hawthorne. This is where all the good things are actually happening. This is an aerial photograph of the company. There you can see on the left a first stage rocket that has been put up there. I think this was the first stage, the very first stage rocket that actually successfully landed on a drone ship in the sea. So that's why it ended up there. This is the young Elon Musk with a rocket behind him, and there are some legends, obviously, how, or urban myths, that how this company actually started off. Rumor has it, but I think it's more than rumors. I think it's in this biography as well, that he just actually wanted to buy some rockets first, the old rockets from Russia. So he made a couple of trips to Russia, and he wanted to buy some rockets from them. There was some negotiation going on, but eventually his proposal has been refused. So nothing happened. So on again, this is the rumors say that on the way home from this failed trip from Russia, he actually started doing some mathematics in his head, and actually he came up with an idea that what if he's going to actually just build a rocket. So this is how they actually kickstarted the whole SpaceX project. So you can see him designing the very first rockets, what they were hoping that they can achieve some level of success. So it was clear for him that he cannot pay millions and millions of dollars to existing rocket companies to actually achieve his dream. So he started thinking about how he can actually make this dream happen. So he's co-founder of PayPal, and basically he was selling PayPal. And eventually this became the backbone of the financial backbone of the start of this company, and they could manage to start working on the Falcon 1 rocket. That was the very, very first rocket from SpaceX. And they actually had some mixed successes, but it was definitely a massive achievement that about 2 years later, less than 2 years later, they already had this rocket that they could just actually start trying and testing. So this is a remote island in the Pacific Ocean, and this is where they decided that they're gonna launch this Falcon 1 rocket. And the stake was really high because NASA was already actually thinking of giving them some serious contracts, but first obviously they had to prove their flight worthiness. So after the initial struggles, basically they had three failed launches. This actually wasn't a massive surprise, but basically the reasons why these rockets were failing is, apart from the very first one, is just tiny little errors like the corroded nuts, bolts, things like that. In that climate, it actually didn't work there as they are expected. So they had a launch attempt in 2006, 7 and 8, and they had 3 failed attempts. So eventually Musk decided that because the third attempt was so close, basically, and it was just a tiny little error that prevented them from success, that a couple of weeks later he actually gambled and he put the last of his money basically on this one single launch. Because if this fails, that he already said it since, that most likely SpaceX is non-existent today. So we can see the team here actually anxiously looking at the launch pad, and for the greatest success, they managed it. But before that, he actually stated, and I quote, "There should be absolutely zero question that SpaceX will prevailing reaching orbit and demonstrating reliable space transport. For my part, I will never give up, and I mean never." Probably if somebody heard his quotation back then, he would say, okay, another bozo, sort of making promises that he probably will never be able to keep. But looking back from 2020, that's actually, it's believable that he is going on till the last straw, basically, and he will never, ever, ever give up. So here is the success. We're going to jump a little bit ahead of time, but just for the comparison's sake, here in 2008, on the left column, we can see the Falcon 1 rocket and the emotional sort of reaction from Elon Musk, and most likely he's hugging his brother, Kimball Musk. And on the right, it's actually this May, basically, May 2020, they successfully launched the Crew Dragon, which I'm going to talk a little bit later. But yes, this is where they got. And I will get a little bit more into this if you give me some minutes. Right, so this is the Falcon 1 nozzle after launch. And here they were already having the plans for a crewed spacecraft. What we know today, Dragon 2 or Crew Dragon, they call it in certain names, but this is the manned version of their cargo spacecraft. But back then, this was just a mock-up, and they were just started working actually on this project. But we didn't know, nobody knew, that we are facing a totally new era. They gonna make reusable rockets actually from science fiction to reality, and that is probably something that gives the biggest strength to SpaceX, because they understood that if they are not going to start using their rockets again and again, then they will never be able to build the future that probably they were dreaming about. This is the whole team a couple of years later, but it just represents that this is not about Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the guy who shows the way, but the actual work is done by individuals, bright, young individuals. So probably this is one of the reasons why most of us really like SpaceX, because it's incredible what they can achieve, basically. Okay, so he stated that without the success, they would die out. So after they managed the first Falcon 1 rocket, they actually started a new project. It's called the Falcon 9. This is the Falcon 9 rocket that we see these days. Actually, there was a launch today. Another 60 Starlink satellites just gone to space. And so these are the things that everybody can actually follow. So you just start following SpaceX on YouTube and you can watch these launches yourself, which is, I think, I mean, what an age we are living in. Seriously. So basically, Falcon 9 rockets, this is the workhorse of the company. This is the Falcon 9 rocket, this is the new version, but we will go through, I'm not going into very tiny details, but I would like to just show a couple of photos and talk a little bit about this spacecraft, because this is the spacecraft that eventually made a massive difference. So you're gonna see this is the Falcon 9 rocket. I will break down into parts, but in general, this is the first stage of the rocket with the rocket engines. You can see the nozzles on the bottom. This is the landing leg, because they can land this rocket, the first stage. And there is a separator between the first and the second stage, and this is the second stage. This is the so-called fairing. This is basically the payload cover. It consists of two halves, and this basically protects anything that's underneath, basically during that journey across the atmosphere going to space. So the height of the rocket is 70 meters. This is a large rocket. Its diameter is 3.7 meters, and it can take to low Earth orbit around almost 23 tons, which is incredible. It can also go to geotransfer orbit, so to geostationary satellites. It can deliver up to 8,300 kilograms, and also to Mars, which it never done before, but around 4 tons it can send to Mars. So this is the first stage. This is fueled by RP1, which is a rocket grade kerosene, and it has 9 so-called Merlin engines. Also, I pointed out this is the leg, and it has grid fins, but I will show you some videos later which shows the rocket. So this is the interstage, and you can see the grid fins just there. There are 4 of them, and these are basically helping the rocket to control it at the return to the ground, or this so-called drone ship. This is the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. This is usually the one that has a so-called vacuum optimized engine, so it's a much bigger engine nozzle, and it's because it's in vacuum. Engines are working differently in vacuum and sea level, but I don't really want to dive into that too much. These are the fairings. You can see it consists of 2 halves. It's about 13 meters tall, so this is a really big stuff, and the diameter is just over 5 meters. But you need to know in the background, this is the Crew Dragon or Dragon 2 spacecraft, and when they launch one of these spacecrafts, then basically you don't need a fairing, because the spacecraft can withstand basically the problems going through the atmosphere. So this is one Merlin engine, and there are 9 of them on this rocket. Also, when they started working on this amazing project, basically they started working on landing the first rocket, because they understood it's a similar thing that if we are flying with an aircraft, and if we throw it away every single time we're flying an aircraft, one ticket to an aircraft would be immensely expensive. So they understood that they need to master this thing. So they started a project called Grasshopper. This is the Grasshopper test vehicle, and they were actually testing the flight capability. Also, you can see they put a little mannequin on it, a little cowboy. It's a real size person. Actually, you can, if I go back, you can see that mannequin just here. So it gives you an estimate of how big this rocket is actually. Just a fun fact that NASA actually ran their own survey, and they wanted to find out how much it would have cost for NASA is if they develop the Falcon 9 rocket, and they came up with a sum of $3.6 billion if they run the show and if they actually developing Falcon 9 rocket. They also found out that if it's done by another existing company, the bill could have been around $1.6 billion. So compared to how much SpaceX actually developed this vehicle is actually jaw-dropping. So including the Falcon 1 design, it cost them $390 million. So 3.6 billion, 1.6 billion, and 390 million. So they did about 1/5 of the cost of what any other rocket company, American rocket company, could have done, and about 1/10 of the price, 1/10 of the original price that NASA could have done it. So this is already something just mind-blowing, basically. So I'm gonna show you some videos. I need to mute it first. So this is a funny video. They were already trying to master how to land a rocket, but this is just called how to not land a rocket. So first they started landing rockets on the ocean because they just wanted to see that how it performs. Obviously the road is always bumpy to achieve this, but they were on a very good way to actually achieve it. And then we saw a couple of failures. They tried to mainly land on sea or on drone ships. Sometimes they ran out of hydraulic fuel, or they just ran out of propellant, or they had all kinds of problems. Here this one was an almost success, but sadly it came on a really weird angle, and then you can see the kaboom was following it. Thank you, Roman, nice to see you here. Hello. So yes, so they just call it rapid unscheduled disassembly. This is a funny word to say it. And here the leg collapsed. So actually they were really close to actually make it happen, but there were always some mistakes that prevented them. But if somebody was actually following what was going on, you knew that it might happen. Here there was some damaged legs, and now they use a so-called octograbber. So it just crawls underneath the rocket, and it just keeps it fixed there. Here they ran out of propellant. Obviously it damages the legs, and boom. So yes, but eventually, for our greatest joy, I think in 2016 they had the very first successful landing. And I mean, just look at this. I mean, this is what we've been dreaming about. And just look at these. I mean, I've been watching these kind of landings, and I have to tell you that I just cannot have enough. Every single time I watch a landing, I still can't believe that this is possible. This is still blowing my mind, because this is just an incredible achievement. So I'm gonna show you some of their achievements that followed later. So this is a camera in the fairing. I mean, we are just spoiled by these beautiful videos and pictures. I think anybody who ever watched any live rocket launch from SpaceX, I think what comes in mind immediately is that so enjoyable these live broadcasts are, that actually I think you don't need to be a space nerd or a rocket fan or you don't need to be into this to actually enjoy this. And I can tell you, whenever I showed it to anybody, from the youngest to the oldest, it's still quite incredible. But I will show some figures, and you will see that basically they are doing very well. They had launched a lot of rockets. They already started reusing these first stages, because the whole point is, apart from landing, is that they did some iteration to make it tougher, make it more resistant. I mean, look at this. This is usually a nighttime shot. these are all from the live broadcasts. So this is from the first Falcon Heavy launch, and I mean when they synchronously landed. This is I'm gonna talk about this as well. His cherry red Tesla that just gone to space and went around Mars. I mean, just name me one more company who's done anything like that. You could see the grid fins in action, basically. So yes, they are doing incredible things for our biggest joy. This is also, so reusing parts is not just about the rocket. So this is not a CGI, although some might think. They are actually capturing the fairings that covers the payload. And you will see they have two ships called Mystery and Mischief. They like to give very funny names to vehicles. And basically, there you go. It's just they have this massive net, and they try to capture capture this half of the fairing. You can see that it has a parachute, it has some thrusters as far as I know, it has a GPS signal. Gabor is asking, the drone ship is remotely controlled or totally self drive? As far as I know, it has a connection with the fairing, a GPS connection, and they try to sort of make it autonomous. But I'm not entirely sure if it's driven by people, but I think it's not. I think it's automated, if you ask me. Roman is saying that if it's not remote control, sign me up as a captain. Yes. So, okay. So this is, these are mind-blowing stuff. Okay, I'll give you some numbers. So they already had 92 launches since the Falcon 9. I'm not too sure. I think it's about Falcon 9. I don't think that the Falcon 1 rocket launches are included. But look at that. 92 launches. They have landed first stage of these rockets 53 times. And they reflown rockets 38 times. So I know that there are stages that actually already flown 6 times. So imagine that the cost of making one of these rockets, or the first stages, are actually shared already. But he clarified after 3, but most definitely after 4 launches, actually they're 0. So there are no more costs, because this is what this whole thing is about, basically. That reusing these rockets. And this year, 2020, after almost 9 long years of America losing the capability of them launching people to space, they actually regained this because they have the Commercial Crew program. And during this program, basically, instead of NASA is developing their own rockets, I think they changed their tactics, and they rather gonna outsource basically the task to build these rockets. And so they actually started a partnership with private companies like Boeing, like SpaceX, like Lockheed Martin, like Blue Origin. And so far, let's be frank, this is proving an absolute success, because just a year earlier, in 2019, they had the Demo 1 mission. So autonomously, it went, the Crew Dragon spacecraft, it went to the ISS and docked, stayed there for 8 days, and returned to Earth safely. And this year, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley basically took this trip. This obviously, it's a demonstration, it's a test flight. So they were there to actually test the vehicle to see how how trustworthy the hardware is. So here they are, and they decided once they are already there, because there was some level of shortage on the ISS, they stayed, I think, about 3 months, and they helped out basically the crew on the ISS to run all these projects, because the ISS, the International Space Station, is nothing else but a laboratory that orbits around Earth, and basically it gave us so much already that it's worth actually investing in it still. So this was a crucial moment when these guys safely returned to Earth and finally restored the capability of America launching American astronauts from American soil. So this is the moment when they opened the hatch. We were anxiously waiting outside. I mean, we were watching the live feed and we were really hoping that everything is going to go smoothly. So this was an absolutely amazing achievement. I think this is something that not just SpaceX, not just NASA, but in general everybody who's human actually can feel some level of pride and joy. I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning, at least regarding to what I'm doing in my free time. You need to know that I'm actually a photographer, an astronomy photographer. So I started up with astronomy, but eventually I ended up more taking photos of the International Space Station. That became my sort of weird obsession. And luckily I'm about to infect a lot of people. I hope some of you who are watching, then I hope you will get some level of interest, or at least you're gonna start minding that there is a thing called the International Space Station and they have doing a lot of things, and these astronauts are my rock stars basically. So yes, it's fascinating. So what I've done is I sort of try to get to a level where I can safely can take a really good close-up photograph of the International Space Station. So when the Demo 1 mission went up in 2019, then obviously I was hoping that the weather gonna favor me and is gonna give me some level of opportunity to capture the Dragon, the Crew Dragon Demo 1 flight spacecraft actually docked to the International Space Station, the forward docking port of the Harmony module. So this is it. This is the Crew Dragon. This is a photo of it from space. I think it was taken by the astronauts. And this is basically docked to this bit. That's the Harmony module. So this was already a fantastic achievement. But when this year, when they launched the Demo 2 mission with the 2 astronauts, I desperately wanted to try and image the space station, and eventually I did. And there is the Crew Dragon. I will point out my website at the end, which is spacestationguys.com. You will find tons of photos of the ISS, and also you will find certain pages where I basically summarized all the photos from all over the world. People who are taking photos of the ISS and they actually achieved the similar shots to mine. This is an animation. This is probably what I really like to do, an animation of my photograph. And there you go. Clearly you can see the Dragon spacecraft. So that was my sort of my part of recording some history. And obviously America was happy. There was a huge ceremony done. Elon Musk was happy. Here it's more pride, but I think this is the joy. This is when he probably feels like that, yes, I achieved something incredible with my team. And I think everybody was really happy for this moment when it happened. I think we all, Kimball Musk again, there with the cowboy hat on the left. so yes, that was an amazing moment, I have to say. I really enjoyed it. But we cannot just sit back and relax, or actually they don't do that, because the Crew 1 mission, the first operational mission to the International Space Station, will be launched the end of this month, which is really just around the corner. October 31st, there will be a huge, I think, publicity for this. 4 people gonna basically fly to the International Space Station, and obviously we can't wait to see it. I really do like, basically, I really do like the logo of this mission, because you can see here, so this is the International Space Station, and this is all the previous manned missions. So starts with Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and the space shuttle missions. So I love this patch because it gives a very good sort of walk down on memory lane, and it reminds us that how lovely this achievement actually is. These are the 4 astronauts, 3 American and 1 Japanese, and they are going to the International Space Station at the end of this year. Obviously, I hope that I'm gonna have a favorable weather, and I will be able to photograph with all my friends who are actually doing the same thing, like Gabor, who actually chatting me in the live chat area. By the way, again, if you just joined this talk, please ask me any question down in the chat section. So these are the 4 astronauts. I really like these shots. These are really cool shots. They did the same thing with Bob and Doug, and I think they're just gonna stick with this. And about the hardware, I took in the past some photos of SpaceX vehicles, namely the Cargo Dragon. This was the CRS 16. This is the commercial resupply services, and the CRS stands for that. And you can see the ISS on the left, and on the right, that's the actual Cargo Dragon with its. So the Dragon one had solar panels. So yes, even with a small telescope, relatively small 10-inch Dobsonian telescope, you can actually achieve pretty cool details. Here you can see again the Cargo Dragon docked to the nadir side, which is the Earth-facing side of the International Space Station, and you can actually see the cylindrical bit. We're actually looking into the unpressurized compartment of the Cargo Dragon spacecraft. So it's it's incredible. Okay, so they also, of course, had some bigger shots. They were aiming for something more serious. So heavy, usually in the rocket industry, is standing for payloads that requires an awfully big rocket. So they decided that they are going to build the Falcon Heavy rocket. This is basically 3 stages strapped, 3 Falcon 9 rockets strapped together. At least the first stage bit. I will show you a proper photo about it, but I just had to show you this photograph because these shots are just staggering. This is actually from SpaceX website, and so this is what it looks like. You can see some details about the rocket itself. And let me just correct something. Just give me 1 second, because I can see that some of my screen is actually not entirely visible. So I'm just gonna do a tiny iteration of the screen. Just bear with me for 1 second. I am not going to hold the talk for too long. Okay, I'm nearly there. There we go. So yes. So you can see that this is basically 3 Falcon 9 rockets strapped together, namely the first stages. They put 3 of them together. Obviously, the 2 side boosters has a little cap, but they were having some delays with this design, and basically because they had to redesign the core stage, the center stage in the middle. But once they did it, obviously they put a second stage on it and a fairing. You can see that the Falcon 9 launch of the Falcon 9 is $62 million, whilst the Falcon Heavy is $90 million. The difference comes so how much actually it can take to space, how much weight. So the Falcon 9 can do, as we touched before, almost 23 tons to low Earth orbit, A Falcon Heavy can do about double, but when it comes to geotransfer orbits or geostationary satellites, then it's almost triple the weight that the Falcon Heavy can take to that higher orbit. And to Mars, again, it's triple. Instead of 4 tons, it can take almost 14 tons to Mars. So this is just incredible. And they achieved this amazing flight. I think you need to look it up. I don't want to waste too much time with videos, but you need to look it up. The maiden flight of the Falcon Heavy. I have to tell you that I missed Concorde, I missed the space shuttle era, I missed so many things just simply because of my age. And I have to tell you that this was the first of a launch which was a new hardware. It was a big shot. This is the biggest rocket today in the world. This can take the most payload to space, and I have to tell you, even Elon Musk gave 50-50 to success fail ratio. And I have to say, when I saw it flying, my heart was almost sort of jumping out of my chest, and it was just going and going and going, and it was so far the most surreal actual experience in my life. So this is fun. I have to say, this is absolute fun. So back to the slides. So this is a couple of, these are the photos of this Falcon Heavy. You can see one person, let's say two people actually standing there. So you can see how teeny tiny they are compared to the actual rocket itself. And this was taken from above. And this is some photos basically of the rocket launch. I think this was taken during the maiden flight. This is a wider shot, and this is what I mentioned, his Tesla. Because what happens is you can see the two fairing halves, 1 and 2, and in the middle there's a mounting plate, and they just put the car on top. And basically, usually rocket companies, when there's a maiden flight of a rocket, they usually put just a block of concrete or something just to simulate the weight. But SpaceX had a bit of a different idea, and they decided they gonna chuck their Elon Musk's cherry red Tesla. And I think, and they even put a mannequin in there, just sitting just there. And I have to tell you that during that maiden flight I just mentioned, that was just incredible, because we've seen this. I mean, this is just unreal. This is so unearthly. This is just mind-blowing. I think this is the shot that everybody is going to remember. Let me just double check the questions, because I can see that there are some. Let's say, do you know if SpaceX offers internship for first-year graduate students who are not American? Thank you. Defender of Mankind asked me that. I do not know. I do know for a fact that you cannot work for SpaceX if you're not an American citizen. That's what I do know, but I am not entirely sure. I think it's worth Googling it. I wish I could answer it straight away to you. Sadly, I don't have the information. Sorry for that. Right. Also, yes, this lecture is recorded, so the link you are watching it now, you can watch it back anytime, basically. Okay, so again, this is this beautiful cherry red Tesla Roadster, and I mean, just look at that, the crescent Earth at the background. This is just beautiful. I think this is called spaceport. Right, Starlink. This is going to be a very controversial topic, because I would say I'm still more an astronomer than a space enthusiast. Probably they are competing with each other, but I don't think that I will ever distance myself away from astronomy, because it's always going to be in my heart. Nothing can beat that. But Starlink, which is going to be a satellite constellation, is already creating huge controversy. Technology versus preservation of the status quo, let's namely our night sky, and I'm torn between the two worlds, and I try to tell you exactly why. Okay, so before I crack on, I can see Leslie Bound. You wrote that no more scrubs in October, please. You need to know, whoever you're watching this program, is that end of September and the beginning of October, we're supposed to have a couple of rocket launches, but it's just scrub after scrub after scrub. Scrub means that they have to delay the rocket launch. So they already named this month Scrubtober for a reason. So let's hope that there won't be any more scrubs. Today's launch took 60 Starlink satellites to space. So once we clarified this, so this is going to be a global system of satellites. They are trying to cover the whole Earth with internet, and it has military implications. It has usage of the population. Basically, you can be anywhere, and if you have the right dish, the right equipment, the receiver, then basically you will be able to have internet wherever you are, the most rural areas, which is beautiful. We know that sometimes technology it has its price, and I'm not entirely sure that this is the price that we have to pay. We will see. I think future will tell. It's not my sort of it's not up to me. I don't have to decide about these things. I don't like it, but I can see the technology behind it, and I will touch base exactly what do I mean exactly. So these are the satellites. This is how they look. They have the so-called satellite bus portion of it, which has all kinds of gadgets like autonomous collision avoidance, or it has its own ion thruster, so it can change its elevation, and by the end of its lifetime, basically it will deorbit itself, so it will just nosedive into Earth's atmosphere, and it will basically self-destruct. We can call it that. So this ion thruster or propulsion system uses krypton, which is so this is the way to actually they can move themselves, which is a brilliant thing. It has one solar panel. It can be foldable. As you can see, this is 60 satellites stacked together, and when they are launched, they are basically unfolding like a deck of cards. And this is still kind of a secret, because this is something they mastered, and so far we don't know exactly what's the mechanism. Roughly we do, but they don't really want to show us too much stuff about it. Okay, also I can show you some beautiful render images that's probably putting it into perspective. So this is one Starlink satellite. I'm sure technology point of view it's a beautiful thing, but if I come from the astronomy point of view, I think a lot of people are really hating it. Really don't like these things. And okay, before I get the astronomy bit, this is the dish that one going to need. This is the receiver, so you cannot just walk with your laptop or your phone and just receiving internet from the Starlink satellites. You need this receiver. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so I can show you this beautiful drawing. Tony Bela, he has Hungarian ascendants, just like I am Hungarian, so it was really nice to bump into his work. And this diagram basically explains that how they actually launching these satellites. So you can see the Falcon 9 rocket takes off, first stage and second stage separates, the first stage comes back and lands on a drone ship, as usually they do. Then the fairings actually separate, they try to catch it with one of these ships, and then basically the second stage is going to turn around basically, and it will deploy, so it will get rid of 4 of its so-called tension rods. These are keeping the satellites in place, and then once the tension rods are off, they are actually, so the whole stage, I will show you, the whole second stage is actually rotating around its axis, and basically as it deploys the satellites, they are unfolding. They use the terminology that like a deck of cards, probably that's the closest you can describe it with, and that's it. And once they sort of away from each other, then they can unfold their flat solar panels, they can change their orientation, looking forward, looking upwards, and yes, and they try and they begin to actually raising their orbit. Okay, so this is now where it's interesting, because we hear a lot of negative news about Starlink satellites and how it will affect astronomy. But for the first time, we can actually see something, some real impact in life. So we know that the wildfires are raging in the US, and I think these photos were taken in Washington State, and basically they started giving internet to people using their services just for emergency or whatever reason they wanted to, and probably this is the first step of seeing the advantages of the network. Obviously they have so from FAA they have permission for 42,000 satellites, but they want to do 12,000. So that's their actual plan to do that. So they want to pull it off from 12,000 satellites. I hope that they're not gonna require even that many. Just for comparison, just think about it. Right now, so far, mankind launched around 4,000 or 5,000 satellites altogether, and they just alone, this company wants to actually launch 12,000 of them. Low Earth orbit, okay, but still, it's an incredibly huge number, and the problem comes when we realize that it's not just SpaceX. There are actually other companies lining up, and they would like to actually do similar things, and that's where it's gonna get a little bit crazy, I think, because they just, this is just too much. It's they cannot we cannot flood space, because if there is a collision and they start a chain reaction, we can actually screw up low Earth orbits so much that actually nobody will be able to actually go to space. I can see. Thank you, Max. Max Whitby just said a great talk. Thanks very much. Do you know how long the krypton fuel lasts? I don't know if that's related to the krypton fuel, but what I do know is the proposed lifetime of a Starlink satellite is around 5 years. So I reckon that the fuel or the lifetime or the reliable lifetime of a Starlink satellite is around this period, probably 5 years, I can imagine. So probably that's hopefully the answer for your question. And I can show you now a video from Marco Lambroek from Netherlands. He's an excellent photographer and astronomer as well, and he captured the very first time a train of Starlink satellites. So this is what happens when they launch these satellites, and you can imagine how many people actually assumed that these were UFOs or I don't know, you name it. There were all kinds of variations of explanation that what actually was going on. So this is now real science. This is from one of the big telescopes, probably from Akatama Desert, but I don't. Let's assume that I didn't say anything. Okay, so this is taken from a massively large professional telescope used for scientific purpose, and you can see these satellites crossing the field of view, and this is just bad. This is very bad because these telescopes, they are looking for very faint lights. So let's say a supernova outburst or a near-Earth object that can actually affect Earth later on. So what they do, like my friends, let's say at Northolt Branch Astro, Guivas and Daniel Bamberger, even amateurs can do this from their gardens. They are actually doing observations of the satellites, and then they do the mathematics and they do calculations that how is it going to impact Earth. So is it going to ever cross the path, or we are in a safe place? So what I'm trying to say in a very long and awkward way is that these observations are crucial. So we cannot mess with these kind of satellites. You know, we cannot mess up the proper science that's being done, and that's for our sake. So Daniel Lopez took a photograph of the comet Neowise, which mesmerized us lately, and you can see it's bombarded with these trails. But these are basically long exposure shots, and they just leave a long streak on the photograph. So this photo from Rafael Schmal, a fellow Hungarian photographer. So this is called The Prison of Technology, if I remember yes, that's the title of the photo. And this photo won in Human in Space category in the Inside Astronomy Photographer of the Year contest. And to be fair, I've been taking photos of myself, and I will come back to this photo for a second because I have something else to say about it. But because I have a telescope, I do know that you can take photos. So once I have managed to photograph one of these Starlink launches, like today, but it was at the right time. So it was flying above London about 45 minutes after launch, and I knew exactly what was going on because I was watching the live stream from SpaceX. And I do know that by the time they're gonna get here, they already the second stage of the rocket and the 60 satellite, they have separated from each other. So I knew exactly that by the time they're gonna get here, we might be able to capture something that will just blow our mind. But I did not expect this on my photos. So you can see these are the 60 satellites. I actually counted them, all of them are there. This is the second stage of the rocket, of the Falcon 9 rocket, and I could even take photo of the tension rods that I mentioned that keeps the satellites in position. So you can imagine that photographically this was a massive achievement for me. This is the second stage of the rocket and the 60 satellites, but they were getting really far away, so the two chain of satellites became one, basically. But I have never photographed the second stage of the rocket, of the Falcon 9 rocket, which was on my list. So you can imagine that this was a huge achievement to me. This is an animation, and you can see that there's even a flare on the bottom of the second stage of the rocket, and you can see how the light is flickering on the satellites. So photographically, this was an incredible achievement to me. And also my fellow ISS photographer and friend Ralph van der Berg, again from Holland, he took these photographs of the Starlink satellites. So you can see that one was taken in March 24th in 2020, and the other one was in May 27th. So you need to know that Starlink is trying to address this brightness of their satellites, and they basically aligning, orientating the satellites. So basically, instead of, let's say, this position, I think instead of this position, they use the knife edge position now. So basically, they try to reduce the reflectivity, because they always more problem before sunrise or after sunset, because the sun is already set, is below the horizon, but it can still reach these satellites, and that's why they are so bright, and that's why they are actually causing all these problems. So you can see on his photographs that actually on the left how bright the solar panel was, and on the right, just about a month later, when they actually address the problem, you can only see that the bottom of the satellite is illuminated. So they actually bringing down the brightness of these satellites. These are my photograph. I managed to take some as well. I do not know that they were unfolding, but yeah, I took some Starlink satellite photographs as well. You can see that it sort of resembles to the shape of this thing, and you can see this is just for comparison. So I have taken both photographs with the same equipment, so it gives you a so-called apparent size. So we always in the sky, every object has an apparent size. Let's say Jupiter is a couple of arc seconds, I don't know, 50, 40, 50. Usually the ISS varies between 20 and 60, 65 arc seconds. So you can have a comparison that how large these satellites are. And this is an animation from these photographs. I mean, this is the cool part of photographing these kind of things, because suddenly it becomes achievable. You can see these things with your eye, and you don't need a special equipment. Okay, so, and I go back to this photograph for a second, as I promised, sorry. And okay, so what I mean about the problem, and what I raise all the time, what causes me a problem, is that the Astronomy Society actually using wrong examples. Because this very photograph, where you can see these very bright streaks, you need to know that the satellites, they are the brightest after the launch. So a couple of weeks after the launch, they are at the brightest phase. And to be fair, if somebody is actually trying to show the impact of this, the long lasting impact of these satellites, then you would, I mean, if you want to be really fair player, that you would take photos of the satellites which are at their final position and plane. So how they are actually behaving when they are operational at their final 550 kilometer altitude. So if you really want to show how they impact astronomy, you shouldn't be taking photos of the newly launched satellites, because obviously they are so much brighter. And I've seen this so many times that actually people are showing photographs which is misrepresenting the problem. I understand there is a problem, and I do believe that there is a way to mitigate it to a certain level, at least not to affect the amateur photographers, and somehow, hopefully, in the long run, space equipment's gonna go to space, and then we will be able to do the same amount of science as before. But again, we see the good and the bad side of Starlink, and that's why I'm torn, and that's why I don't know exactly what's the way forward, to be honest. Let me just double check quickly some questions. Oh, Chris and Anne asked me, how long do the satellites stay in orbit? Usually, I think SpaceX said it's about 5 years, roughly. That's gonna be their lifetime, so hopefully they are actually keeping that sort of time frame. And then, so there's a circulation of these satellites. Why not paint them black? Okay, so the problem is in space is that there is a thermal issue. So let's say when the spacewalkers, so astronauts who go out for a spacewalk, explain it all the time that their side facing towards the sun, it heats up incredibly, and the one that is not illuminated, it cools down incredibly. And obviously the reason why rockets, spacecrafts and space suits are white is because this is how they can manage temperature. Basically, if it would be black, it would absorb so much heat that it would overheat, basically, and that's not good. Same applies to any space hardware, including a Starlink satellite. So it's not just like we painted black and that's it. It has a huge surface of solar panel, which is very reflective, so you really can't really address the problem with just painting it black, because it doesn't solve the problem, sadly. Okay, and probably enough of Starlink, and I think this is going to be the final stage of my talk, just after 1 hour. Starship. This is going to be the crazy thing. So we're talking about a spacecraft that's already being developed in Texas, in Boca Chica to be precise, and this is going to be a crazy vehicle. So this is going to be wider and taller than the Saturn V rocket that took people to the moon. So this is going to be 120 meter tall. The first stage is going to be 70 meters, and the second stage is going to be 50. It's a little bit confusing. The bottom part is called Super Heavy, and the top part, the second stage, is called Starship, but weirdly the whole rocket called Starship as well. So this will lead us to some confusion in the future, or at least if somebody is not really familiar with the thing, but I think after a while you can make your peace with it. You can see how the design changed over the years. It has at some point at the beginning it was called Interplanetary Transport System, but then they changed it to Big Falcon rocket or Big F rocket. Some people like to call it that way. And also now we just call it Starship. This is just the second stage, the Starship section. This is how it changes. So this is where we are now. We are going to have 2 wings on the bottom, 2 flaps on the top, and it has a liquid oxygen and a methane tank. It's methane powered, so it's a Metalox engine that's pushing this rocket forward. And this is what it looks like once it's gonna be being built. It's 120 meters of beauty, basically. And for the first time, if this goes ahead, we are going to have a 100% fully reusable rocket at our disposal. You can imagine that it's gonna open up all kinds of prospects. This is where we are now. This is the closest of what they think is going to look like. It looks like that the Super Heavy booster, so the first stage, going to get the similar legs than the Falcon 9 rocket has. Also it has grid fins, just like the Falcon 9 rocket. And this is going to be big. I mean, just take a look at how one human just dwarfs next to the rocket. So this is going to be fascinating, and they are testing today. There was a cryogenic test. This is how Boca Chica site looks, part of it. This is the test site, and you're gonna see how it changed just over the years. I mean, look at this, what they have done, and it's changing every day, every single day. I can tell you, if I don't follow what's happening there for about a week, then I need to do catch up, because they do so much work there, improvement, building the facilities, the ground support equipment, the rockets. They are testing, because the whole idea of SpaceX is basically to quickly try and fail, error. This is what they try to do. So they're testing, and if something doesn't work out, they just basically change the plans and actually they do something different. Also, you're gonna see what exactly I mean, the development. So this is from spaceflight.com. I can recommend you to follow them. So these are 3 test vehicles. One is the the Starhopper, and also we have they give SN, so serial number name, so SN5, SN6, and this is a hop test. During this, basically they wanted to test the hopping capability, so how it can hover, because they are going to land these vehicles. So what they did is they're supposed to have 3 so-called Raptor engines. This is the new engine they are using, and they only fitted 1. But because the 3 engines are symmetrically positioned at the bottom of the rocket, and they only put 1, that's why the tilt of the whole body. But you can see this looks like a silo basically for grain. A lot of people just call it. And on the right, the Starhopper more looks like R2D2, if you ask my opinion. But I mean, just look at this. These are the tests they are conducting. And previously they blew up a couple of test vehicles, but the rapid development is just fascinating. This is incredible. I cannot emphasize enough that how fast the pace of their development is. So we can find on the internet, on Twitter here and there. This is from Corey. I can, if you're interested of the topic, I can urge you to follow him. So this is the test they are going to conduct, hopefully within a couple of weeks. This is going to be the first time they're gonna do a 15-kilometer hop, and they're gonna test the aerodynamics of the rocket as well. So they're gonna do a so-called belly flop. So the rocket so they shut down the engines, as you will see. They turn it on its side, and basically it will just glide. This is the whole plan of them returning the rocket. So instead of having heat tiles, or at least not the amount as the space shuttle had, they're gonna have some level of heat tiles, but only at the very crucial surface areas. And this is the belly flop maneuver, the so-called belly flop maneuver, and this is how hopefully it's gonna glide. But I can assure you that it's about 50-50, that the rocket gonna do well, or the rocket is just going to smash back down on Earth. So this is going to be, either way, a fascinating stuff. So if you haven't followed these things, then I urge you to follow either Marcus House or What About It, Felix Schlang. These are the 2 guys who are actually bringing us in English news day by day. Week by week, once or twice a week. So this is a very good way to follow exactly what's gonna happen. And by the end of this talk, we go a little bit bananas. Here is a comparison of a banana and some humans. The banana gonna stay with us. How big the Super Heavy, the booster, is going to be. This is insane. I cannot say how insane this is. But when it's gonna fly for the first time, I'm gonna sound like Doc from Back to the Future when oh boy, if you hit 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some miracles. So this is exactly what I'm expecting from these tests. And if everything gonna go well in the next years, hopefully one day we're gonna have a whole Starship, first and second stage, 100% fully reusable. And this can take lots of weight to space, tons of equipment, cargo and humans to the moon or to Mars. So this is a very potential and capable vehicle, which hopefully is going to blow us completely out of our minds. So this is how they propose it. is similar structure how the Falcon 9 rocket operates. That's why Falcon 9 rockets were so important in this story. So you will see that the first stage, just like the Falcon 9 first stage, the super heavy booster gonna come back and land, and they also propose that they try to refuel these rockets in space. So we are talking about a technology that currently not exists. It doesn't exist yet. So it needs to be developed. So, but when it goes ahead, boy, we are going to Mars. There's nothing gonna stop us. Nothing ever going to stop us. This is an incredible future. If you asked me 10 years ago, I'm really pessimistic, I have to say. But now that I'm following the news, what SpaceX is doing on a daily basis, it's just incredible. It is incredible. And obviously they are sort of competing with NASA's SLS program, which is a completely different design. And hey, we are going to the moon. This is the Artemis program. This is going to be the next couple of years. We are actually going back to moon. Just imagine this for a second. We are going to watch people in crazy good video quality actually landing, walking, doing stuff on the surface of the moon. And I'm really glad that the Artemis program is pushed forward. Artemis program is hugely, again, gonna be a cooperation between NASA and private companies. This is not going to go away at all. It's not going away. The cooperation between private companies, because this is much more sustainable. And if you allow me, I will tell you why it's so important. It is important because for the first time, the taxpayers cannot fall out of the project. So an Apollo program cannot happen because how it's all designed is that basically the private companies are vital part of these projects, and they are going to do it sustainably. They're gonna be doing it cost effectively, and we are going to stay on the moon sustainably. And I do believe that this is the doorstep of us eventually going to Mars. There are a million reasons why to go to Mars, mainly because we are explorers. We are human species. We are a human species, and we are always exploring and discover. That's what pushing us forward. No matter how, there's no better way to say this. And when we gonna nail how to actually stay on the moon, how we can grow stuff, how we can actually build a city or a smaller habitat where we can grow plants, we can actually live our lives. So we try to break away from Earth, because that's the whole point of Elon Musk's idea, to become an interplanetary species. Because therefore, if we nail this, then it means that if an asteroid gonna hit the Earth tomorrow, then we're not gonna go extinct. We're not gonna join the very niche club of the dinosaurs. It means if something happens to us, then basically we are surviving. So we are maximizing the survival chance of the whole species. And that's why I think myself and a lot of people are so enthusiastic about what SpaceX is doing and what's coming down in the pipeline. Obviously, I'm cheering for other companies as well, but this company, what they already achieved is unparalleled at the moment. I cannot name you one more company that can land rockets and reuse them. I mean, how cool is that? And obviously, once we will master it, then I can bet you that humans gonna step on the surface of Mars one day, hopefully within 10 years. And we're gonna see that. And that's gonna be just fantastic. Well, thanks very much for staying with me for this long. I a little bit overshoot myself, but I really wanted to put out these messages, to be fair. So thanks very much if you watch the video live with me. Thank you all my viewers. Thanks very much for being here. Please follow the Westminster Reference Library, because they do have incredibly good programs, online talks just like mine. So if you probably like mine, then please look them up on their website. I will put a link a little bit later down in the description. Also, the channels I recommend you to follow if you're really interested in SpaceX, or if I awakened your sort of interest towards the subject. I think it's fascinating, and you don't need to be an expert or a nerd to see the importance of this whole mission, basically. So yes, comment before I go, because I'm just double checking. Max, oh, fantastic presentation. Thank you very much, Max. Thank you so much. How about making your next talk about the detailed plans for Moon and Mars? I have to tell you that I'm not really into that much, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dig myself into it, and I can guarantee that at some point I will come back with a presentation about that. Probably I'm gonna sooner talk about the ISS. That's what I usually do at the library, because the imaging of the International Space Station or spacecrafts is my main thing. Before I go, I would like to show you my website, and if you have some time, please do take a look, because I am really proud of it, and it's full of incredibly good photographs. And I don't only mean my photographs, but I have a special section for guest photos. So please, if you have some time of your hand, then please take a look at it, and you will find, I mean, just very quickly I show you some photos what people sent me, and it really is mind-blowing about the space station. Also, you can see the photos of I mean, just look at this, it's incredible. Also, I have some SpaceX related photos. This one in guest photos, SpaceX Crew Dragon missions, and here you will find all the photographs of amateurs from all around the world who took photos of the Crew Dragon spacecraft. So this is what I regularly do, but if now you requested, I'm gonna keep in mind. I'm gonna talk to Zsuzsa, and if there is some level of demand, I'm more than happy to talk about it if people would like to hear that. But thank you very much. It's a cool idea. Anthony Carr, moving image work. Thanks very much for the interesting talk. Thanks very much for staying with me and watching it. Great presentation. Thank you, Emra. Okay, excellent presentation. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. Thanks again, whoever watched it, and please follow the library. If you don't have a telescope, then go and rent one from them, because those tiny small Maxutov telescopes are incredibly good. You will see Jupiter, Saturn, and the moon with it, and it will just blow your mind, I can guarantee you. So please do and rent equipment from them. Okay, that was me for today, and I wish you a pleasant evening, and stay tuned. Space is cool. Please pay some attention. Take care, guys.